Good afternoon, colleagues and our students, and also to our colleagues at the various video conferencing centres who's connected with us today. Very welcome to this last session of the Teaching and Learning Festival. I must say a very exciting session because we're going to have the highlight, I believe, of this festival being the announcement of the winners of the 2017 Teaching and Learning Awards, and we're also going to be entertained by musicians, and we're going to finalize and conclude with an amazing storytelling. I'm really looking forward to this session. So, colleagues, before I introduce our musicians to you, I would like to remind you that the exhibition of the Master's Students in Visual Arts can still be viewed in the Gerong building on the ground floor until 4 o'clock this afternoon. So please go and support our visual arts master's students. So then firstly, the musical interlude by two of our own musicians, Professor Mark Dubie from the Department of Museology and also Professor Karen de Vroop, the acting director of the music directorate at Unisa. And just very briefly, an introduction to our two musicians. Now, Mark Dubie was appointed in 2001 as the first director of the Standard Bank National Youth Jazz Band. He completed his doctoral studies in 2007 on the topic of sound painting, based on the New York composer Walter Thompson's Sign Language for Life composition. In 2010, he was awarded as an established researcher by the National Research Foundation. Professor Dubie serves also on the editorial committee of the International Journal for Music Education Practice Journal, and is also the co-editor of the Taylor and Francis journal Musici. In 2014, he was also awarded a book writing grant from the Academic and Non-Fiction Authors of South Africa. And Professor Karen de Vroop is currently the acting director of the Directorate of Music here at our own institution. Professor de Vroop has performed at various major jazz festivals, and colleagues, it's very amazing, across the USA, Europe, Asia, as well as South Africa. Professor de Vroop is also an NRF-rated researcher with over 70 peer-reviewed publications and conference papers. It's now my honor to call them to the stage to entertain us. Thank you. Mark and Karen, thank you so much. You certainly did not need the Nobel Peace Prize winners or other musicians to entertain us. That was lovely. Thank you very much. Colleagues, now one of the highlights of the 2017 Teaching and Learning Festival, the announcement and awarding of the prizes for the 2017 Excellence in Tuition and Learning Awards. I would like to call Professor Gugu Moche, our Vice Principal, Teaching and Learning, Community Engagement and Student Support, to the stage to do us the honors. Thank you very much, Professor Moche.
Colleagues, good afternoon. First, I would like to thank you for staying after lunch. As you can see, we lost at least 2/3 of the people who were here earlier on, so I want to thank you. But also I want to thank you for having taken the time to attend, to contribute, to engage. But I think I will be remiss of my duties if I didn't express my concern that whereas we know that there's work being done in teaching and learning, whereas we know the importance of teaching and learning, that somehow we still have to work hard to convince people to attend. We still have to work hard to convince people to engage, and we still even have to work twice as hard to convince people to even engage with our students. And that, for me, is a challenge. It is a challenge because we are academics. I pause at times and I ask myself that why did we become academics? And I know that the joy I feel when I walk into the library with a lot of books is something that we share, I would assume, as academics. The joy we share when this generation of knowledge, I think it's something we share as academics. So I wonder that when we then have to pause and reflect that which we are joyful about, why is it that we will have to then struggle to get to that point? I wonder that for me personally, I get excited. In fact, I can tell you that one thing I don't like very much about my job right now is the bloody lot of meetings I sit in. An opportunity to just sit and be in a space where ideas are shared, for me, is the space I cherish. And I want to believe that as academics, it's what we cherish. Are we beaten so much by the system that in fact we go to it willingly for more punishment? That when we have an opportunity to exchange, to engage, that we run away from it. And that, for me, is a challenge. I sat here yesterday for the better part, and I will talk a little bit about the last part. And maybe the hall is big, so my sense of how many people we have is sort of skewed. But I sat and I was fascinated to hear what our colleagues do. And you sit and you reflect, you say, wow, they're doing this. And maybe you're sitting looking at it and say, maybe we could do even a little bit add wine. But for me, sitting back, it's that we have a crop and a cadre of academics who care. And that narrative does not come across a lot. In fact, when we talk about academics, there's always something that we're doing wrong. So when we have an opportunity to talk about the things we're trying to do right. I just find it challenging that we have to convince colleagues to be here, to engage, and that for me, it's a challenge. So I will be coming to colleges, maybe not so much this year, we don't have much time left, but I'll come and I'll sit and I'll listen, and I will want to hear, what is it that you think we can do better? What is it that you think we can do to work together in this project? But most importantly for me, how do we strengthen the scholarship of teaching and learning? And for that, I would like to hear you. So for our presenters who are here, who spent time preparing for the presentation, even if you did not get an award, I intend to follow up with you to give you feedback on what was seen as maybe something you can strengthen with your submission, and submit again. Because if nothing else, we want to look at what you have submitted to say, how can we look at what you're doing as a best exemplar to help us in our journey? So I thank you. I'm also humbled by our inputs from our keynote speakers. Dr. Kasturi, thank you. Yesterday, you despite, colleagues, I must tell you that I was pushy a little bit with her. When she missed her flight, she kept on saying, maybe I could Skype. And I said, no, Skype is not an option. In fact, I deliberately ignored her when she talked about that. So I must thank you for being here, because I think you've added value to our discussions, and we look forward to a prolonged engagement with you, because I think together we can even make significant changes for the higher education sector for our country, so thank you. In his absence, Professor Gajeni, we also thank him for his contributions, because I think it also sharpens how we think about things. And to our musicians, and I know it's a closing in a way, but for our musicians, thank you, Professor Duby, Professor Dufro, thank you so much. You always add that smile to our faces. But to the portfolio at large, colleagues, I thank you. I'm humbled to be working with you. I'm humbled to the engagements that you bring to the table. And I think that I'm one of the blessed to be working with such extraordinary people. So I thank you. I also thank you for your openness to, at times, difficult conversations. Because conversations around curriculum transformation, conversations about how we should reflect on who we are not easy conversations, and they're not meant to be easy. So I thank you for your willingness to open, for your willingness to sit and reflect. And I hope that as we do that, we can do it in a way that is honest, and we sit and we're brutally honest with each other, but we also do it in ways that build. For me, it's not helpful that we kick each other, we destroy each other, we bend each other out of shape, and yet we proclaim to be building. For me, it's not helpful. In fact, I think it's a destructive exercise. But again, as South Africans, we tend to think that when we are breaking, it's when we are building. And it's a culture that I think as a university, we need to reverse. That we can have honest conversations. We can have conversations that make us extremely uncomfortable, and we know that it's only when we are uncomfortable that it means that we are somehow looking closely at ourselves and at our comfort levels to say, how do we move? But we do so to build. So thank you. But also I'm hoping that next year when we come back here, we can look back and say, from last year, this is how we have moved. And I'm hoping that the executive deans, the directors of schools, the CODs, will encourage colleagues to submit their awards for their awards. But also, I said this last year and I'm saying it again, that we can see a little bit of diversity. And that is important. Because I think it says there are multiple voices that come through in what we do. And I'm hoping that we can pause also to reflect, to see that why is it that we don't get as many submissions from our black colleagues. It's important. It's important because it adds diversity to the voices, but also it says that excellence in our university exists in all shapes and forms. And we should not allow a narrative that can form and come across that seems to say that excellence is skewed, because it can never be. So we need to engage. We need to understand why is it that we are not seeing as many applications coming from our black colleagues, and we need to engage that. And finally, colleagues, sadly, yesterday as we were sitting here, Professor Machale came and called me that our colleague who was sitting with us here yesterday, Professor Radibere, when during lunch was going to his office, he collapsed, and when he called me, the colleague was still lying there in front of the elevators in the CAMS building, HEH. And it was a sad moment. It was a sad moment to see a colleague that we were with here a few minutes later, they are lying cold there. And it was sad to also be there and see the reaction from the family, the loss. It's just sad. And I say that to say, colleagues, that it is important that as colleagues we also treat each other well and acknowledge each other, because you don't know. You just don't know. That is a colleague who was sitting next to you yesterday and walks out of here and collapses and is gone. But the most sad part for me is the reports I kept on getting from colleagues who were traumatized by this also, to say that they ran to the clinic, our clinic, to ask for support, for somebody to come and help with a colleague. And they said, and these are reports, I'm not saying that's what happens, I'm saying it's reports. And they said that the response was that, no, we don't operate outside this space. So they refused to go. And it's the reports one gets to say that maybe it's a rule, I don't know, but quite frankly, I don't care. That we just have to treat each other with care, and people must do their jobs. And so, it's with great sadness, colleagues, that I share with you that Professor Radibere, who was the COD in the College of Economic and Management Sciences, is no longer with us. And that, for me, it's sad. And I know we have done this yesterday, but if we can just spend just a moment of silence. Thank you. Now it's difficult to make the transition. Colleagues, every year we award excellence to practices that we believe show very excellent exemplars of what we can do. And we have several categories for this. In fact, we have 6 of those. It's Excellence Award for contribution to institutional knowledge to tuition. And in this category, we basically look at contributions to implementations of policies or that have led to policy changes, contributions that improve Unisa systems, contributions towards open educational resources, and contributions that infuses relevant quality standards that positively change values and how we do things. The second one is Excellence Award in Module Design, and as the name suggests, this basically acknowledges excellence in additional student support instruments such as mixed media tutors, extended use of my Unisa functions. It recognizes the team approach of how it was utilized, particularly in the planning process, in the online development, in the design, in application of the quality standards. And one of the things that we look at is that creativity. Do we see relevance, and do we see high impact? Do we see cutting edge innovations in content? Do we see innovative use of learning technologies? And the third one that we look at is the Excellence Award in Student and Success and Retention. And this one looks at the implementation of new strategies that improve student success and retention. So it's not your day-to-day. It's that in the day-to-day, on top of that, what is it that we see that comes out that warrants recognition of excellence? It looks at included innovations in terms of new strategies to improve student success, the demonstration of monitoring of student performance in order to ensure, for example, timely identification of students that might be struggling. And also, we look at provided evidence in terms of student strategies. The other one is in excellence in assessment. And here is, you're looking at an integrated assessment strategy that actually promotes student learning, development of innovative assessment strategies. In this also, you look at applied creative assessment strategies leading to improved student retention and success. The other one is excellence in student support. Here we're looking at student support which is sustainable and continuous and broad. So it's not just a one-time kind of thing. Have we seen this coming on for quite some time? And it has to be an integrated support and development for support, and therefore it must be part of the learning. It's not an add-on. And the sixth one is an Excellence Award in Tuition, and this one looks at has the awardee developed the module to comply with national legislation and regulations and institutional requirements? Has it ensured that the student and industry needs are met? Is it the materials reflect exit competencies, or at least support for exit competencies, and how are these exit competencies assessed? And what are the quality assurance mechanisms that are there for improvement, also not just in terms of the modules, but for future sake? So those are the categories that we have. And for the purposes of this, we had 16 applications. And out of 16 colleagues, the colleagues tell us that when they were actually doing the assessment, and that's why I said we will sit with each applicant to give feedback in terms of how we strengthen. But again, remember, these are Excellence in Teaching Awards. So they have to be not just business as usual, but demonstrate that higher level that you will expect to warrant the award. And the award comes with not just a plaque, but a check of 25,000 rands that you can choose to go buy chocolates if you so choose with it. But the intention of it is to say we acknowledge, and also to say how do we incentivize. We hope moving forward, we were talking a little bit with some of my colleagues, that we need to get a little bit of external sponsors so that we use the money to plow back into the scholarship of teaching and learning. So out of 16, we had 4 that finally were awarded. And that's huge, drop from 16. And some is because the submissions were either incomplete or some of the documents, for example, could not be open. And I was not part of the team that looked at this, but I received feedback. And so from the feedback, it is clear to me that we have a lot of potential in terms of those submissions, and we have to revisit. So, as the drum is rolling to then announce who the winners are, I must also say that yesterday, just sitting and listening, and I also engaged our colleagues, I thought that there were other presentations that I think need recognition, and not recognition, but commending, to say that this is a presentation, or at least it's an initiative that has a lot of potential to say how do we actually then note that presentation. And also to say that the presentation that lends itself a little bit even more aligned to our theme, and which is transforming teaching and learning. And there was such a presentation yesterday. So colleagues, again, for those that did not win the award, please note that this is not to say they were any lesser, but to say that there are things that we need to strengthen, and that we will do. So I'm going to start with a presentation first yesterday, or a submission yesterday, which lent itself to a presentation yesterday, that I thought, listening to it, does some few things that as a portfolio we're still struggling with. This year, early this year, I engaged with one of the colleges, in fact, the College of Accounting Sciences. And when I engaged with them on curriculum transformation, there were some very serious questions that were being asked. And those questions were, how do we do this? We're highly technical. We have standards. We have all this. But listening yesterday from the presentation, which did not end up as one of the 4, but just listening, we felt, at least when I engaged with colleagues, that this is one presentation that we think begins to steer us also in the right direction, to say how do we do curriculum transformation in an accounting space. And that presentation was presented by Nkosinathi Masilela and Suzanne Marie Buckner. And we want to say thank you for it. And if I can ask that you come forward just for us to say thank you for that presentation, and to also engage further with that presentation to say how do we actually strengthen that. But it's a presentation that we felt is commendable and needed to be acknowledged. So Nkosinathi Masilela and Suzanne Marie Buckner, over to you. This is what they say Secuta means. The next awardee It's from the School of Business Leadership and is for student support and retention, and it is Professor Anton Grobler. Professor Mashile was supposed to be helping me with this. The next recipient of our 2017 Excellence in Teaching Award goes to the College of Law, again in the category of student support, and it's Ms. Stone. The next recipient is Ms. P. CBC. We saw her video that was put up much earlier, and Ms. CBC is from College of Education. So if I may ask, I saw Professor Mabunda done. I thought Professor Makai, I saw her earlier on, maybe she stepped out. Oh yeah, Professor Makai, the executive dean, may we ask that you receive the award on behalf of Ms. CBC. And finally, for institutional knowledge and support, the recipient of the 2017 Excellence in Teaching Award is Professor Danny Duplessis. Colleagues, at this point, I would like to thank you again for your participation, for your efforts. As a portfolio, we strengthened by your contributions, the students' contributions. So we thank you for that. At this point, I'm handing it over again to the program director, Professor Sadler.
Thank you, Professor Mochi, and also congratulations from my side to all the recipients of the awards. That was really fantastic. Colleagues, now another entertainment by Ms. Zotwa Radebe, who is a lecturer in the Department of Anthropology and Archaeology. She is currently on R&D leave, working on her doctoral studies on the economic logics of stockfels. She's a committed decolonial scholar and activist, and an artist that is imagining a world free from all forms of injustices. She does storytelling performances in many Black communities to open a space for communities to think, engage, and express ideas that contribute to a better world than we can imagine. Ms. Zotwa Radebe.
Thank you. I wasn't sure if you were talking about me. Sanibonani, ninjani, ngikhona nami. Before I start, I think I need to thank the organizers of this festival for the opportunity. I always get excited when I'm invited, but I get very nervous when I'm on the stage. I think I'm very relieved that half of the people that were here in the morning left. That makes me feel better. I'm given a difficult task, but I think I will do it in a very simple way by telling a story written by Ubabu Credo Motwa in his book, Indaba My Children. I hope I'll be able to tell the story through the spirit that the story was written, because I can never compete with what has been happening here, the musical aspect. I am going to sing, but I cannot match what we had earlier on. Devilizwi kwelonjolo dakhangela dasondela lalisitsho lisithi ilizwe lifile chilo chilo imandilo ncholo devilizwi kweloncholo dakhangela dasondela lalisitsho lisithi ilizwe lifile chilo chilo imandilo njolo owayembethe ingubo ezimhlophe wayembethe ingubo ezibomvu lalisitsho lisithi tili 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 chilo chilo imandilo njolo owayembethe ingubo ezimhlophe wayembethe ingubo ezibomvu lalisitsho lisithi tili 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 chilo chilo imandilo njolo devilizwi kwelo njolo dakhangela dasondela ola lisitsho lisithi ilizwe lifile chilo chilo imandilo njolo devilizwi kwelo njolo dakhangela dasondela ola lisitsho lisithi ilizwe lifile chilo chilo imandilo njolo. It is said, in the beginning, there was no sun, no stars, no moon, no earth. Nothing existed but river time and nothingness. River time and nothingness were neither cold nor hot, dead nor alive. How long river time and nothingness existed, no one will ever know. Why there was only river time and nothingness? Some things we must never try to learn. Nothingness had been floating upon the mighty waters. Nothingness had been floating upon the mighty rivers of time, that river with neither source nor mouth, which was, which is, and shall ever be. Then one day, or is it correct to say one day? Nothingness desired river time, like a flesh and blood male beast desires its female partner. It is in this strangest mating that a tiny, tiny living spark of fire was born. This tiny, so tiny spark could think and develop conscious of its lonely state. No one or anything could hear its cries. I am what I am. That was the living spark. In the lonely depth of river time and nothingness, like a fallen baby lost in despair in a dark, cold forest, I must either end my life or increase in size. It was more uncomfortable with nothingness. There was nothing for a spark to feed upon, so it had to feed upon itself. If I wish to engulf nothingness in present size and state, I shall not win. The spark started to grow. Indeed, then the spark grew. It fed upon itself until it grew. It fed upon itself until at last it equaled the size of nothingness. Nothingness became aware of its unwelcome presence and decided to destroy it. Nothingness at first had tried to crush a newly formed enemy, but the spark resisted brighter and became yet brighter. Then nothingness cast a spell of cold upon the spark, cold, a deadly foe of heat, but this made the spark to grow only hotter and yet hotter. The living spark did grow, grew until at last it equaled nothingness in size and sustained itself. Proceed with growth, it destroyed its father nothingness and digested him with the most awful flash of light that anyone or anything ever chanced to see. I am what I am, it boasted. But River Time was very angry with what the spark had done, and it called the spirit of cold to fight the spark outright. The spark tried to destroy the spirit of cold, but the spirit of cold resisted and fight, and then devil is we kwelo cholo dakhangela dasondela ola lisithi ilizwe lifile jilo imandi loncholo. I am what I am, it boasted. But River Time was very cross with what the spark had done and quickly sent the spirit of cold to fight the spark outright. A mighty battle soon started, in which the spark tried to melt the cold spirit and destroy it completely. While cold, its old cold spirit blew its cold breath into the flame, but only to turn into white ash, the seed that gave birth to the sun, the stars, the moon, the earth, and all that lives. That mighty battle that started so long ago, today still rages silently and shall yet proceed till time shall cease to flow. The wise men of the village relate that if flame one day shall win, all that exists shall perish in one consuming fire. While if victory goes to the spirit of cold, all the living things shall freeze to death. May the Great Spirit, who is the King and the paramount chief of all, grant that neither flame nor cold shall ever win the war, because whosoever beat the other, the sun, the stars, the moon, the earth, shall cease to be. May both antagonists fight forth for everlasting time, because on their unceasing conflict, all life depends. Thank you.
Zoltwa, yes, I did introduce you. You were an orchestra on your own. So lastly, I would like to call on Dr. Britta Savada, the Deputy Executive Dean of the College of Human Sciences, to do the vote of thanks and closure. Thank you, Dr. Savada.
Thank you, Professor Sadler. There are a couple of things we still need to do, which I just want to briefly catch up. You'll remember yesterday with a program that got a bit mixed up. We had somebody called Lazolo Pambo, who's a student in, a graduate actually of the program in BA program in creative writing, who because of that program became a South African poet, novelist, and essayist. The majority of his work has been published in New Contrast, LitNet, the Kalahari Review, Solplaatjie European Union Anthologies, Sentinel Literary Quarterly, and New Coin. His young adult novel, The Path Which Shapes Us, was published by Lingua Franca Educational Publishers. And the book is available if you want to have a look at it. Lazolo Pambo was going to read a poem for us, and I think it's important because it speaks to us being aware of who our students are. So if you will allow me, I will read it on his behalf because he could not be here today. She walks with a golden crown on her head, fierce but gentle in angelic motion. Her reddish eyes glow like an orange fire on a mountain. She takes the stand, crying out, I will not apologize for the pigment of my skin, because I am human before I am albino. All eyes stabbing her, captivated by her distinctive aura, smooth body, sublime. There's rhythm in her step, her divine sight, majestic, sweet voice crooning melodies. She lightens up the room with a smile, her pink lips dazzle, a universe seeking comfort in her arms. She lives under scrutiny, but fights the cause to free herself. She takes the stand, crying out, I will not apologize for the pigment of my skin, because I am human before I am albino. Her state is a condition, but worth more than royal jewels. The world is her oyster in this life and the next. She beams eternal sunshine. So if you remember nothing else of this Teaching and Learning Festival, is that we need to listen to who our students are and that they will insert themselves into the curriculum. The second part that I just wanted to wrap up with is that, and if you remember two things about the Teaching and Learning Festival, the second thing is that there are different forms of knowledge. As we have seen, there is the spiritual, there is the communal, there is the visual. And so Zingisa has been doing his graffiti. So I just wanted to read you his explanation of the graffiti because it also captures what we were talking about. The form of graffiti that Zingisa, and remember he's a PhD student in visual arts. The form of graffiti that Zingisa does, he calls auto-ethnograffiti. Ethnography is the study of people in a culture. Autoethnography is a study of the self in relation to a particular culture. Graffiti has been known as a tool of resistance, connection, transformation, challenging the system, and is thus decolonial, equipping the mind with vigilance and spontaneous creative abilities. Autoethnograffiti is the art of self-writing of the self on society with new cultures and identities. Graffiti art was considered the art of vandalism, but on the streets, it was taken as a surrogate father. It housed many homeless, fathered many fatherless, mothered many motherless, and connected many distant. Therefore, graffiti was and still is the art of inscribing oneself on society. Autoethnograffiti is an embodiment of the act of students inserting themselves into the curriculum. Autoethnograffiti is an act of self-writing toward decolonial cultures and new identities. Bearing this in mind, there is nothing new without something old. Autoethnograffiti is a decolonial combination of the old and new cultures and identities based on that is Unisa, locus of enunciation. Where's Unisa? Thank you, Zing. I just want to close with a vote of thanks. Professor Moche has already thanked the keynote speaker, Dr. Kasturi Behar-Alik, and Professor Sabelo Ndlovu. I also wish to add to that, to all the presenters from yesterday till today. We really enjoyed what you shared with us. I'm not going to read all the names again. I would also like to thank the students yesterday, you know, and thank you, Professor Moche, for, no, I can't see it. for talking about the attendance, because I specifically asked people to not disrespect the students. And I don't think there were 20 people in this hall when the students were presenting. It was really, yeah. But I want to thank them. I think we learned as we were working together, and we had fun as well. And for the ComSA students who've been doing the ushering and also assisting and who are also in the play, thank you for that as well. The artists, as I've already thanked Zingisa, Mark and Karendra, and then Lazolo Pambo in his absence, Zodwa as well, thank you. But a two-day event like this does not happen without a lot of work. So I want to thank the organizing committee, led by Professor Hanarieta Kruger from the College of Law. Can you please stand, ma'am? She was assisted by Dr. Sekhololo Mabudusha. I hope I got that right. Mabudusha, also from the College of Law. Dr. Ingrid Marais from the College of Human Sciences. Dr. Clifford Ndlangamandla, and the marketing team from the College of Human Sciences, led by Ravonia Naidu. Thank you, Ravonia. Winston Rampedi, and then also Zingisa, who's also in that team. We talked yesterday about the flowers for Johan Opperman and his daughter Esther for coming in on Sunday and doing the flowers. And also sound and video, thank you very much. I think we were lucky. Everything more or less worked, except maybe for Nicole's sound today, and then for the photographers as well. And Unisa Radio was here most of the time, tweeting and recording as well. The administrative support was done by Dudus Kosana and Annemarie Pretorius in the Department of Anthropology and Archaeology, but also Tabang Sindani in Professor Moche's office. Please, Professor Moche, if you can give him our thanks. I've already mentioned the ComSA team. And then lastly, I think we need to thank our Vice Principal for her leadership, for being with us, and really just having that passion. It really helps us to to keep working in teaching and learning, and to understand that it's also important to you, and the way you give academic and intellectual and moral leadership is just a joy for us, and you know that those of us who are passionate about teaching and learning will support you all the way. So colleagues, thank you for your time and for being here. And I think with that, I can say this is now, the 2017 Teaching and Learning Festival is now officially closed. Thank you.